This is in response to Billy's Talking Points memo from Thursday, August 27th, 2015, Killing Innocents. Now, we all know about the tragedy in Southern Virginia where a lady reporter and a cameraman were brutally slaughtered by an individual who then committed suicide. And Billy starts right out the gate, indicating that Democrats want to have gun control. And that is absolutely true, and it is the absolute correct response as to this brutal double murder. And of course, Billy wants to go into the fact, and he wants to have justified it by, who was it, Marco Rubio, that the only way we're going to be able to solve this problem is if we're going to get more spiritual. So the GOP wants to say that basically it's just a deranged individual. We can't do anything about it. We're not going to get rid of any gun laws because of freedom. Remember Richie Havens? Freedom from Woodstock. So they're not going to get rid of any guns for freedom. And Billy even indicates, that's the price we pay to live in a society where people have the right to bear arms. And one of the first things that he mentions is how many murders there have been in Chicago, which he indicates have strict gun laws. Now again, the fallacy of what Billy is talking about, and he knows this because he is a smart person. He went to Harvard, and he knows that in the surrounding areas of Chicago, in Indiana, in Southern Illinois, and I believe Georgia, that there are gun shops who are selling guns all over the place legally that end up in the streets of Chicago. So it has nothing to do with the gun laws in Chicago itself. It's the fact that the gun laws outside of Chicago, where it is legal to do this type of stuff, they're making their way to Chicago, and that's where we're having the problem, or having a big part of the problem. And Billy knows this, but he's saying, oh, they have strict gun laws. That's not going to stop. Guns aren't going to stop. That's what he's saying. We can't do anything about it. A centralized government can't stop that. We're not going to have a centralized government telling us what we can do. And we're not going to have the Democrats running that centralized government telling us what we can do. Of course, he then wants to go back into this aspect of nihilism, narcissism, brings in the Marco Rubio aspect. This is spiritual. This is evil. That's what all these other people are saying. It's evil. This is what I saw, evil in his face, blah, blah. But the thing is, it doesn't make any difference, if you think that spiritualism is going to be in a revival in America, because how many times has this happened before and that hasn't happened? And of course, that's the myth. It's sort of like the same thing with immigration. Here's the goalpost for immigration. We have to increase, we have to build a bigger wall. We have to increase the border security. And then as soon as you do that, which Obama has done a tremendous amount, then they move the goalpost further back. And of course, what Rubio and Billy are advocating is basically, we need to become a more spiritual society. So this is how it sort of plays out. Okay, we're all going to be more spiritual, but we're going to have just as many guns or even more guns. But because we're so spiritual, we're not going to use those guns on each other anymore. See how that wagon wheel of concentration, it just doesn't seem logical at all, but that's the way it's going to come about. And when he talks about nihilism and narcissism, he brings up John Hinckley, who he wrote a book about, so he's promoting his book, and talked about how I don't know, did he interview John Hinckley? I don't know. But how he was a nihilist. And of course, he's interviewing John Hinckley 35 years after the fact, and he said that he didn't believe in anything. And of course, if I remember correctly, John Hinckley had a love interest in Jodie Foster, which many men did at that time. She would have been, 19? I don't know if he believed in nothing or not, and it really doesn't make any difference. He had access to a gun, just like this guy in Virginia had access to a gun, and they decided to use it. And of course, we know now that Hinckley's been at this St. Elizabeth's mental place in Washington, D.C. for the last 35 years or so. He still can't get out hardly at all. But the point is, if he didn't have access to a gun, he couldn't have done that. Same thing with the guy in Virginia. And of course, they all want to go into this spiritual act, this evil aspect, and we can't change people's minds, all of this stuff. And here's the thing. We know that gun control, that gun laws work. They work great in Europe. They work great in England. They work great in Scandinavia. And of course, at one time, Australia had that same type of Western saloon mentality because from a technical standpoint, they're a recent country that's evolved with mostly white people after they started shipping them there, in the 1700s. And of course, they had a big mass murder in 1996, and they got rid of all kinds of guns. They enacted strict gun legislation, and murders have gone down considerably. Now, have they gone out completely? Of course not. But they have gone down considerably. And the same thing can be done in the United States of America. And it has to be getting rid of these elected officials from these small states, these Republican elected officials from these small states, and enacting this legislation. Because I know what's going to happen. They're going to say, they're coming to take our guns away. What was that? They're coming to take me away. Haha. Yeah, that's what they're going to say. Who was that? Napoleon the 14th. So they're going to say, they're coming to take our guns away. But in essence, if something like that were to be enacted in the United States, it would take a long time, but it would be very fruitful. And these people like Billy really, really, are basically allowing this type of thing to continue.